Welcome to the Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast, brought to you by 2 Notes Audio Engineering. 2 Notes is a leader in the market for load box, cabinet, and mic simulators. Gone are the days of having ISO rooms or having to record an amp at ear-bleeding volumes to capture that magic tone. The Torpedo Live, Reload, and Studio allow you to crank your amp up as loud as you want, but record silently. Check out www.2-notes.com for more info. And now your host, Eyal Levi.
All right, welcome to the Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast. I am Eyal Levi, and with me is Mr. Bill Hudson, guitarist for the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. How are you doing?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Doing great. Happy to talk to you. Sorry that I was such a flake the last 2 days, but shit happens.
Shit happens.
I'm not normally like that. But I wanted to bring you on here because you kind of achieved some pretty incredible things. And we have a big subscriber community who some are doing great. Some feel really down on themselves because maybe they got into recording or music. They feel like they got in too old, or they have too many things stacked against them, or they just came to this country and have no money and don't know anybody, or, you know, whatever. And you basically, I don't want to sound rude, but you came here, you're a fat alcoholic, and you worked your way from local bands to being completely clean, looking like a model, and being in one of literally the biggest bands on the planet. I know you own a house now and drive a really nice car, and so it's kind of like you're living the American dream, basically. Mm-hmm. The same thing that my parents did, and that I know a lot of great people have done. And you've done it in just a few years, which is really, really impressive. So I wanted to talk about your journey and your transformation and how you got the willpower to fix yourself and overcome not just personal obstacles, but geographical obstacles and, music industry obstacles. So, first off, congrats on everything.
Thank you very much, man. And I appreciate the words immensely. It means a lot. And actually, here in a little bit, I will tell you why this is another accomplishment for me. It's funny because as you were talking about the difficulties that most musicians face, I've been through each and every one of the things you said. I was born and raised in São Paulo, Brazil. And like you said, I was a fat kid. I grew up, but I went to like rich kids school. You know what I mean? And I wanted to be a metal guitar player in 1997. When kids are like all into electronic music in Brazil. And there was a lot of, back then society was a little different too. So like bowling wasn't a monster like it is now. Like where people bully another kid. He gets reprimanded or whatever. Back in my day, if you're a fat kid, you're supposed to get bullied. That was kind of the culture, especially in Brazil.
Yeah, and it's not like you didn't have a huge support system of celebrities defending you back
exactly.
then.
That's what I mean. In fact, the celebrities were telling you to lose weight. That was the thing. And at the same time, I got really into rock music, and I always identified myself with the American culture. I know it's something that a lot of foreigners say, and I meet a lot of foreigners here all the time that say that too. It's like, well, I started watching American movies or listening to American music, and then I wanted to make it in America. And and I mean, that's kind of what it was. But at the same time, my favorite music back around that time, and well, still to this day, was like European power metal, nothing like the American market.
Back then, the American market for hard stuff,
oh my God,
was like new metal.
Yeah, Limp Bizkit, it was really big at the time, and those bands. And I mean, I love the first Linkin Park record. I love a lot of the Korn stuff, but like I didn't get a lot into new metal, and especially being a 15-year-old fat kid from Brazil who played guitar fast. That's the last thing I wanted to listen to. So I liked Halloween, I liked Stradivarius, and I basically was on my own. I had no friends or girls didn't have any interest in me, so I just practiced guitar all day. That's basically what I did, and I was talking about the American culture thing, because at the same time, I was, thinking, how is it that a big country like this one, nobody can, quote unquote, make it in music, especially heavy music, out of here, when we have Sepultura, and we have Angra, and that's it. Nobody else, But the main reason that, from my point of view, that bands weren't able to succeed in Brazil was because Brazilians were basically only open to bands that come from outside. Now, I did a podcast with Doc Oil, and when I brought this up, he's like, well, New Jersey is the same way, so we used to say we're not a local band. I'm like, you don't understand. You don't understand. Any band that here in the U.S. gets 100 people or less will get 2,000 people in Brazil. Any band, but no bands in Brazil can get any success because of the mindset that they have, that the foreigners are so much better.
Dude, I can tell you from my experience, basically anywhere south of Mexico, that's true. Mm-hmm. It's without fail. Like, I was on a tour with Dark Funeral once, the black metal band, and okay, so you can guess. Yeah, exactly. You can guess how some of those shows were in the U.S. Yeah. Like, I mean, some of them maybe had 250 people. Yeah. And the bad ones had like 30 people. It was one of those tours, and we go to El Salvador, and it's like 3,000 people. Yeah, dude. It's ridiculous. It's a weird mentality that I've never been able to figure out. Even being out of Brazil for over a third of my life now, I go back with the bands and people speak English to me, and I respond in Portuguese. I'm like, dude, I'm Brazilian. We met 10 years ago at this very bar, but like, it's so weird. It's a very odd thing to try and explain to a foreigner, and I never succeeded at it. But so you had to get out. Yeah, essentially. Oh, especially because too, what was going on at the time was Angra was really big, and the reason they were really big was because the only rock magazine in the country was their manager too. So like any other album that came out, they trashed in the magazine and put Angra in the cover. So I'm like, you can't fight that. You can't fight that system, And then people in Brazil, oh, whatever, we don't need it. No, you fucking do. They're the media. You don't fight that. Instead, there's two things you can do. Either you can just not be a musician, or you try to play the game. And that's when I figured out that I had to either go to Europe or the US, either or. My favorite music was European, but I figured the language would be a problem, so I was like, well, yeah, eventually I'll learn German or whatever, but I speak English, not perfect, but well enough to communicate right now, so maybe I should try to get to the States, And it's in a similar time zone. Yeah. Oh, that was actually, the culture was another thing too, because, now knowing Europe as well as I do, I'm like, if I try to move to Germany back then, I would die of depression, because there wouldn't be any Walmart or 24-hour stores or credit cards. I'll just go crazy, if I did it back then. Yeah, the U.S. is definitely a lot easier to assimilate into. Yeah, dude, and plus it is the best place to live, but because it's got everything. It's got a little bit of every culture. It's amazing. So I started trying to figure out a way to get to the U.S. Because I couldn't just come out and not have anything. Although I did try that. And I came here for 6 months and didn't really do much. I went to MI for like 3 months, didn't like it. And why not? Oh man, that's one of my biggest regrets. I just thought it was too good, You thought you were too good? Yeah, like I honestly, like I thought because in Brazil, where I was, nobody really played guitar. So, it was really easy to just play some fast, Ingve Malmsteen lick and have people freak out. So I came here with that mentality that was that good. And I went to MI
and I did a few classes, but the material itself at the time maybe I was a little more advanced than that, but it was the whole experience that I missed out on. And when I went back to talk about actually doing a clinic there, I saw it. I'm like, fuck, I should have studied here, because it's a great experience. It's a great way for you to play with other musicians as opposed to just a computer. It's a great way for you to figure out that you're not that good.
Which is important at some point in time. I remember when I went to Berkeley, I got a quick dose of reality, which was really good. It inspired me to get a lot better at guitar because, in my dorm were Gus G and James Malone. James Malone from Arsis, in case anybody's wondering.
They used to have a guitar duo back then, too, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's when they started that. And I think it was Firewind that James Malone was in. And so those two guys are on my floor, and they're way better than I ever got at guitar. And so it's just like, boom, you're not as good as you think you are. Get to work.
That's exactly it. I actually got accepted at Berkeley, too. I had to make that choice, too, between going to Berkeley or MI back then, And I figured that MI would have been a better choice because of the location, which years later I learned wasn't that important.
Nope.
But again, from Brazil, hearing that, when you go to America, if you want to be a musician, you want to be in LA, you want to be in New York, I just bought into the whole thing.
So you went and you thought, fuck this.
Yeah,
then what happened? What happened?
I didn't like it, and basically I couldn't figure my shit out. I couldn't figure out a way to stay, and I had to go back to Brazil because because my visa expired, So I went back, and at this point I'm already like 20 years old, and I didn't do much with my life. And my parents are like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, I want to live in America. I don't want to be here. There's nothing for me here. I hate these people. I don't fucking want to be here. And then my parents, they're like, okay, but you got to figure out something. You went to school, you quit school. I mean, what the fuck are you gonna do? Well, around that time, I started looking around on MySpace because, again, I was aware that power metal was not a popular style in the States, but I always figured, well, if there was one band, just one, that tried to do that, people would pay attention. And oddly enough, I ended up finding this band. At the time, their name was Salador, and they had just gotten signed to Metal Blade. And right underneath that, they had a guitarist who wanted ad. And I'm like, okay. I mean,
fuck it.
I figure Metal Blade, again, point of view of a Brazilian. Oh, they're signed to Metal Blade. They're going to be huge. Again, I'm living in Brazil. That's beyond my reality to get signed to Metal Blade.
Yeah.
And I sent them an email. And I said, whatever, I want to try out for the position. And I get an email back saying that they have someone. And I emailed them back and I said, unless you have Steve Vai, I'm a better choice, dude. Give me an audition. And then he sends me like drum tracks, just like programmed drum tracks and the songs. And he's like, okay, well, record yourself play over these and send it back. And this is 2004, so videos weren't that common, or 2005 or whatever it was. So I did. I recorded.
So he wanted you to make a video or
any sort of recording.
Okay.
And I had, at the time, I'm pretty sure it was Sonar 4 or something. And I recorded myself playing, the songs and sent it back. And, and then he's like, well, where are you from? Because we're based in Nebraska. And I was like, where the fuck is Nebraska? that was literally my first reaction. I'm like,
dude, I still don't know where Nebraska is.
It is at the dead center of the country, dude. 2 states above, 2 below, and 2 to each side. It's the dead center. Yeah, it's incredible how central it is. But I was like, I don't care. It's the United States. I don't give a fuck where it is. So for some reason, well, not for some reason, because I had been there a little bit too in Florida. I told them I was in Florida. And when I said that, the reaction was like, wow, you live so far. I'm like, wow, what if I tell them I'm in Brazil, man?
Tell them the truth.
Yeah. Well, so, we kept talking online and scheduled an audition. I'm like, I'll tell you what, man, I'll come out for an audition. You don't have to worry about me. I don't even need a place to stay. I'll get, because my parents did want to help me out. They just wanted to help me out do the right thing. They just didn't want me to go. But I was like, hey, let me come to this city, get me a hotel and all that. My parents hooked me up, and I'm like, okay, I'll go out there and I'll get the job and then we'll figure it out. And then we did the audition. I got the gig, and that was my entrance here. Yeah, it's a small band. It's a band that just got signed, but that was light years away from where I was at, from even my reality.
How did you find them?
MySpace.
How much time did you spend searching?
Wow, that's it. That's an interesting question because nobody's asked me that. Yeah, I spent a lot of time searching the search power metal term, but it had to be a power metal band from the U.S. That's because those are the two things that needed to happen for me to. Because I wasn't going to try to a lot of my friends at the time were saying, well, if you want to move to the States, you want to play, whatever, new metal or this stuff. What was going on at the time, And I never thought that you cannot serve an audience, you cannot serve something to an audience that you don't really have. Yeah. I never believed it's like right now with Gent. I'm seeing all these guys that play Dream Theater music saying, oh man, I'm going to start playing Gent to make money. No, you're not going to make money. You're not going to do it right. How do you know that you wrote a song when you hate it enough? So it's true. It's
that's a great way to put it.
It is, but that's how I felt back then. I'm like, how the fuck am I gonna play Korn music if I hate that? I don't hate Korn, but if that's not what I want to do, I needed to find a band that fit my style, at least to have a good template to show everybody else how I can play guitar. That was kind of the thinking at the time. So I must have spent, no joke, 2 weeks, 3 weeks every day looking on Facebook, on MySpace.
Yeah, that's what I figured. That must have been quite the search because, first of all, finding a power metal band in that era in the U.S. And then finding one that's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you found a lot of local bands where the dudes were 45 years old and were absolutely horrible.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of those. And it's funny because at that time, from that search, I found two bands that I wanted to contact. Them and another one that, even though they weren't power metal, they always came up on the search all the time. And now I'm really good friends with them. It's The Absence, from Jeremy Kling.
Oh, yes.
So that was another band that kept coming out. And I would listen to them and be like, this is not power metal. Why do they keep coming up? But I kind of like them, And I started emailing with them back then, before I ever had a career or anything. But, Celador ended up working out, and the next step was to move to Nebraska, And even though, yeah, it wasn't the coolest place to live, I still say that it Americanized the fuck out of me, because I meet other people from Brazil, and I don't know. I always think that they're not quite in the culture. There's always things that are off, and especially here in Florida, in California, dude. Where I lived, there was no person with an accent. It was so.
Well, they had a Midwest accent,
right? Which is really considered the standard, because that's why PayPal has their call center out there. Because they say that the people in Nebraska speak the standard English. And that kind of is true. That's the way my wife speaks. She kind of talks like a telemarketer. but dude, no, it was funny because I got out there and I would meet someone and this person would call me the next day. Hey, actually, that was my wife. Hey, will you talk to my sister? I'm like, why? Oh, because she doesn't believe I met someone from Brazil. I talked to, I'm like, hi. Oh, oh, she say from Brazil? Yeah, I'm from Brazil. She starts laughing. I'm like, what's so funny? Oh my God, the accent. Ha ha ha. It's like, it was a new thing for those people, you know. And I lived there for 3 years, so I learned, you know, all the terms. Like, I moved to California, I used to call sodas pop. You know, I learned all the terms. I learned to be American living
Was
out
it
in
a big
Nebraska.
culture shock for you, or was it fun?
No, well, I liked it because I wanted to be American. I was a fanboy of America my whole life. You know, I was the kind of guy that, yeah, America's right. You know, like, I was more American then than I am now, like, being an American citizen, you know. And it was the right place for me to move to, considering how much I hated in my current culture, you know. And I did not like the cold, but I was glad that I could finally say I live in a place that snows, you know, because it doesn't snow in Brazil. We only know that shit from movies, you know. First day I saw snow, and dude, this is like when phones took pictures, but like you couldn't really see it as you took it. You just pointed at it and click, and they look at it. Flip phones, and I took a picture in the snow and sent to my mom. It was the first time I ever sent a picture message, you know, because I was like, look, I'm in the snow. I was like 21, 22 years old. You know, it was super exciting. And then that same. Oh, yeah, and another thing was I really liked the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and the week I moved there, they ended up playing in Omaha. And so it was the first show I saw, too, in the U.S. So it was,
were they huge back then?
They were, yeah, they were. They were playing the same venue they play today, yeah.
Okay, so they were already really big.
Oh, yeah, they were already really huge. But I went and saw the West Band, which is not the band I did the tour for.
Yeah.
But it is the band that had Al Pitrelli and had Johnny Lee. And those were the Sabotage guys that I wanted to see, because I was a huge fan of Sabotage growing up. That was one of my favorite bands. And that's really why I went to see TSO that time. I was like, because Sabotage stopped playing 2002 and basically just became TSO. You know, that's what most of their fans still to this day don't get too. They just became TSO. That's the same band, but they started doing so good that there was no reason to do Sabotage. But I mean, that's the closest thing you ever see to it. So I moved to America the same week they're playing the place. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. You know, I want to go see it. And that was a pretty life-changing first week for me. I remember seeing the show and be like, I want to do that. That's the, you know.
Well, was it your first time seeing a massive rock show?
No, I saw, but you know what it was? It was the first time seeing a massive rock show without like the hysteria of Brazil. You know, I had seen Maiden in Brazil. Dude, it's insane. Like, I'm not sure how the Beatles were, but I'm pretty sure they were in
It's similar.
You know, dude. Maiden,
it seems similar, yeah.
Maiden has more power while in Brazilian soil than the president. They can shoot someone in the face and they wouldn't go to jail. You know, it's like their plane gets close to landing, the airport has to shut down. It's ridiculous. So I've seen Maiden in Brazil. I've seen the first show I've ever seen in my life was Michael Jackson in '93. I was 10 years old. And I saw my mom sent me with my babysitter because I really wanted to see the show.
So what was crazier, Iron Maiden or Michael Jackson in Brazil? Oh,
Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was, but then again, you know, perspective. You know, like it was the very first time I was seeing an international show. So for me, everything looked huge. You know, and plus we had like seats. We weren't really down there, like seeing close to the show. I could only see through the binoculars. Whereas Maiden, I've seen Maiden a couple of times, but Maiden I was already a little older. Not by much though. The first time I saw Maiden I was 13. And it was with Blaze Bayley, and but dude, when they came on stage, I started crying like a baby, and I couldn't understand why. It was ridiculous. You know, there's
I have a question about those big South American shows that I've always wondered, which is, with all the poverty in South America, how, and I know this firsthand because I've got a lot of family in Mexico and been there a lot, and I've just always wondered, how do the people afford the shows? Because when you see the shows, I know how poor people are. And so, but when you see 100,000 people show up to a massive show, did they save up all year for it?
Brother, that's one of the main questions that musicians in Brazil ask. Okay, because have you ever, I'll give you an example. I don't know how into that style you are, but have you ever heard of a band called Hibria from Brazil?
No, I haven't.
Dude, they're a band, like, they're so popular in the power metal genre that I heard about them here in the US. I had never heard about them in the States, okay? In Brazil, I mean, sorry. They'll play the US and do bullshit, 100, 150 people show or whatever, but they'll do a whole tour. In Brazil, they cannot get 20 people to show up. And what, like, me, with that perspective, I did an interview in Brazil this one time like this, and I was talking about it. I'm like, how do you guys have a band like that and you don't respect it? You know, this is fucking bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Why are people not showing up to their show? And then someone gets on the chat online. It's like, well, you're expecting that we have money to pay for every show. I'm like, when these guys play, it costs you the equivalent, you know, to 10 American dollars. When Metallica plays, it costs 300 American dollars. But you're there at every Metallica show. And then the guy said, well, it's not the same thing. I'm like, that's the basis of the problem. You know, that's the basis of the problem. Well, it's not the same thing, but I mean, come on, man. You say it's the same with the merchandise, with the bootleg merchandise in Brazil. You know, people will wear these bullshit bootleg shirts instead of buying official merchandise, saying they don't have money. But when Metallica plays, they will pay 1,600 reais to be in the VIP area, and it will sell out the first day. So that is the question that everyone asks, because everybody in Brazil is broke until Metallica comes to town. They're broke until Iron Maiden comes to town. They're broken to Justin Bieber. There was people camping 6 months before in front of the stadium. 6 months. 6 months. And you know what happened?
Jesus.
2 days. Dude, this was hilarious. This was all over the internet. 2 days before the show, the police simply switched where the line was. So everyone that was first for 6 months now had to get in line like everybody else.
Why? Yeah, that's so cruel.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, that's the way it is. You know, like in Brazil, nobody has money, but everybody has a bunch of money. You know, my mother.
Like, where does it come from? Yeah, like
exactly. I don't know, because these people are broke. You know, normally these are people that you go out to a bar and you'll be like, hey, buy me a beer. You know, but they'll have VIP seats to Iron Maiden. So it's really odd. I mean, also here's the thing, man. Brazil, and I don't know if the rest of South America is like that, because I've only been, you know, to play. I don't know like a lot about the countries, but in Brazil, there's no such thing as a middle class. Like the style of life that I have here in America, you know, owning a house, owning a car, with my dog, with my wife, and I can pay for all my shit, that doesn't exist in Brazil. If you're at that level, you're super rich in Brazil.
It's the same in Mexico.
Yeah, you know, like if you can buy a car, well, that means probably that you have four. You know, like there's not a person in Brazil that has a car. You either have four or you have none. And so it's all these, and there's a lot of rich people there. Unlike, you know, not a lot of people know this, but I don't, at least from my experience, like there's more people with money than without money in any given situation in Brazil, as opposed to here in the States where everybody's basically the same. You know, between the, I don't know, the fucking 40 grand a year and 80 grand a year, like that kind of money doesn't even exist in Brazil. You know, 40 grand a year, 8 grand a year. No, you mean 200 grand a year or 10 grand a year. You know? Yeah, so it's basically these people, you know, it's these like rich kids and all that. But I mean, that's what drives the market in Brazil. That's why Brazil is such a good market for any band, man. You know, I've been to Brazil with Vital Remains, a death metal band that, like, we played this place that was, I don't know, 1,500 people, 2,000
for Vital Remains.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we weren't headlining. Okay, we weren't headlining, but Crisian was. You know, he was us, Malevolent Creation, and Crisian.
That's like good for 100 to 150 people in the States.
Oh, in Brazil it was like 600, 700, and my hometown was like 1,200.
Back to your life in Nebraska.
Oh, yeah.
How long did you live there for?
3 years. I moved there in 2005, and I left in like late 2008. So yeah, 3 years. I was there basically at first for the band, of course, you know, because that was the thing too. Even though I used the band as a stepping stone to get to America, so to speak, things started happening for the band back in the day. You know, we had an album out that had a good first week. We were on Headbangers Ball for like 9 weeks or something with the first video. And we toured with Trivium, we toured with Bullet for My Valentine, their first US tour. We were supporting that tour. We did All That Remains. We did Loud Park in Japan. The label was really pushing us. The label loved the band, but internally it was a fucking mess. You know, we were stupid kids that should never have gotten signed to begin with. But as things started happening, I stayed. You know, I was like, well, I mean, fuck, we're always going to be on tour anyway. Who cares where I live? I'm paying $300 rent, you know? But then when things didn't work out and stuff went to shit with that band, and then I'm like, okay, now this place is really starting to suck.
Okay. Were you guys just touring a lot less? And
No. We had serious internal issues that
okay.
Yeah, it was, I mean, basically nobody got along. And as we started, because like Brian Slagle really liked that band and really trusted that band for some reason, because we were not ready, you know, and our egos started just getting out of control, all of us, myself included, you know, like all of us. And we're thinking we're this huge rock stars when we're a fucking band playing first on a big tour, you know?
Yeah.
So we're hauling our gear, but acting like big shots because we're playing for 1,200 people who are there for Trivium, you know? So...
You want to know which bands I've had the most trouble with, I think, in my recording career? It's always the baby national bands. And people seem to say that the biggest egos are with local bands, and that's partly true. But if you really want to get the crazy egos, you got to get the baby band nationals, because they are in that first stage of being signed and touring, and so it's all new, and they haven't felt the pain yet of having to stick it out, and so they think they're huge, and they think they're the Rolling Stones, and so the egos are out of control. So I've definitely seen that before with smaller national bands.
If you talk to Eric Rutan about this band, Bring It Up Celador, he might freak out in front of you, because our time in the studio was ridiculous, man. It took 2 weeks for the drummer not to be able to record, and we finally programmed it.
Oh, he tried to...
For 2 weeks, dude. And it didn't.
Let's talk about this a little bit, if you don't mind, because
okay.
we talk about recording a lot on this podcast, and one thing that lots of guys who don't understand why you have to end up programming drums sometimes is we tell them that you should know how to program drums, because at some point you're going to be in this situation where the drummer is just not going to be able to do it for whatever reason. Maybe his leg got cut off in a tank accident, but probably not. It probably just fucked around and didn't practice, and anything in between. But you're going to end up in this situation where it's better to just program than to try. But how did it go on for 2 weeks?
Dude, honestly, like, I don't remember much, because also it was my first experience in the studio. But I do remember like a full day of like trying to place the mic so the drummer wouldn't hit them. I do remember another full day of like drummer trying to play the first song, but Well, I mean, you as a producer, I'm sure you deal with this a lot. A lot of drummers think that they can play at a certain speed. And when it comes to it, they really cannot play at that speed, but they can popcorn feed it. So when it comes to a slower speed, they'll be like, well, I actually think it's easier to play faster than slow. No, all that means is that you cannot really play that fast. So, yes. Because the speed that you're able to play is the speed that you can maintain. Don't tell me that you can play at 270 if you do 2 bars at 270 and then it's, unless you can maintain every single hit there, you cannot play that speed. So at least, that's how I see it. But
that's how I see it too. It's the speed you're comfortable at, not the speed that you're
exactly.
Not the speed you're falling apart at.
Exactly. So this drummer, he was young, and he got a lot of praise for being young. He was 16, and all these songs were around like 200, 210, which for power metal, constant 16th notes is tiring for a drummer. But I remember...
Yeah, because that's at the speed where you actually have to use muscles.
Yes, you actually have to play. You can't bullshit it.
You can't do the rapid twitch thing.
So I remember a full day of trying to get this one song that it was at 175. And then the drummer kept saying that it was too slow. But the demo was programmed at 175, so like, this is the speed that we should be playing this song this whole time. Like, just because we slop it live, well, right now you're in the studio, you have to actually play it. And it just couldn't do it. Again, like I said, we were not ready for the studio. None of us was. The songs weren't even ready back then. And... after maybe it wasn't 2 weeks, but it was easily like a full week and then a few days on another week of trying to get the drummer to record. Like skipping songs. Okay, well, this song doesn't work. Which one can you play? Oh, I can play this one. All right, let's try that one. Oh, fuck, that one is not really happening. Until finally we ended up programming. But Eric really didn't want to. And there's a lot of the beats that are from the drummer, but like cut and paste, but the kicks are all programmed. Because I did it. I spent the night doing it. Because he's like, all right, can we do it all in a day? I'm like, I guess I can. I sat with the laptop and I did all the drums in one night. So like, I know what is and what isn't programmed on that record. And I mean, and the funny thing too about that album is, because if you listen to that album and you listen to Cannibal Corpse's Kill, they were made at the same time in the same studio, in the same room with the same gear, and the difference in sound is humongous. And it's just because they were ready and we were not. That's a good example of like the musician making the difference through the same producer and studio and gear. Oh,
dude. When people get obsessed with gear and obsessed with what kind of amp or what kind of compressor or what board are you recording through, and they focus on that more than the actual players, it's so dumb. The players make the most difference out of anything in the studio. The players make the most difference. For sure. And that's the perfect example. I've had that same thing happen at my studio where we have a drum set up for one band and then have to record another band on the same drums, same setup, same microphones, everything.
Yeah.
And it just sounds completely different. That's the case with this
record versus the Cannibal. And it always pisses me off. I'm like, how is it the same? That's because we were a bad band. But you live and learn, Honestly, that experience and all the bullshit that happened internally was what made me kind of move into the more of the session side of it. And session is not even the right word for what I do, because I do a lot of touring, but people call session any guy that's not in the band and just gets paid to play. But session to me is a guy that does studio sessions, which I do too, but not as much as touring.
So of being a what's the word? A sideman. That's the other.
I guess.
That's the other term for it. That's not from metal, but I've always thought of a sideman as being the the guitar player that gets called in to save the tour or save the record.
Yeah, that's been me quite a few times.
So you kind of were like, man, being in a band sucks.
Yeah, man. Honestly, that's what happened. Because I had all the bad experiences thrown at me at once on my first experience. I was like, every single thing about this sucks. Every single thing.
I bet you guys were making no money too, right?
Oh, dude. That one, for example. We went out. Metal Blade booked us a tour, like a test tour, bullshit bars around the U.S. You guys are gonna drive all your gear and play these bars. The thing they do to break in a band. And when we were about 2 weeks before leaving or whatever, Metal Blade is like, you guys got everything ready? The merch? Oh, we don't really have merch. We need that.
Oh, man.
I'm giving an example. So I of the kind of experience we had. So I had this girl. I knew this girl that made T-shirts, just made T-shirts out of her house or whatever. And I got maybe like 100 or 200 made, quickly because I knew her. And then the guys didn't like the shirts and didn't want to pay for it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pay for all this and I'm going to make all the money. Everybody cool with it? Yeah. Sure enough, all the shirts sold out. I made all the money. Then they got pissed that the tour ended and I had money and nobody else had money. I was like, wait a second. I said this at the beginning, that I was going to pay for the shirts, but I was going to make all the money. Yeah, but it's the band T-shirt. You wouldn't make the money if it wasn't for the band name. It is a product. It's a fucking T-shirt that I sold, like a store. You were offered to chip in. You said no, so you don't make any of the money. Is that really too hard to understand? Dude, that kind of shit, I was like, I just can't deal with that. I want to be in a band. I want to play shows, but I really don't want to deal with that shit. So that's when I was like, I'll go after the big dogs. The big dogs will need guitar players. Instead of like doing all this legwork and doing bullshit van tours, I'll go play for the bands that already did that.
So at this point, where were you in terms of lifestyle? Like, were you drinking a lot? Were you still a fat kid?
Oh my God. Yeah, I became an alcoholic on this tour, on these first fucking break-in tours that we had. Before that, I drank some. And I had a few drunken episodes or whatever, but one or two. When we started touring and we had tour support, and yeah, I will always thank Metal Blade for this too. They didn't put us through this like just fuck you, go do it. No, they were giving us good tour support too, which I never heard of since. So, but when that started happening, I was like, you know what? I have a label that wants to keep me on the road. What do people do on the road? They fucking drink. Fuck you. And I started drinking a lot around this time. Dude, I destroyed my life on this tour, and it took years to recover. But it was the access, you're playing a venue, the guy feels bad for you, gives you a bottle. Well, what the fuck are we gonna do, But all of us in the band at that time had that problem. I was the only member of the band that had not gotten a DUI.
Holy shit.
Yeah, we were all, and remember, Nebraska, what the fuck do you do there? But it started getting really bad around 2006, 2007. 2007, I got kicked out of the All That Remains bus for telling their tour manager to fuck off. On camera.
Drunk?
Drunk. She's like, hey, Bill, slow down. I'm like, fuck off, dude. Fucking dude had the camera going and got that on camera.
Holy shit. So, man, I bet that went over great at the label.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God. No, but it wasn't just me. I was probably the worst. I'll say that. But it wasn't just me. It was all of us, And,
so you guys were like that first out of 5 band where everybody is just a disaster drunk.
Yes,
just like coming on the headliner's bus, telling them to fuck off, like probably eating all their food and just...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I ate a whole bag of Doritos the same day. Of their Doritos. I cracked it open. I'm sorry, guys. If anyone from that lineup of All That Remains is listening, I'm really sorry for that tour. Haven't drank in 5 years, guys. But oddly enough, we ran into them again in Japan. We did a festival with them a few months later, and they were cool, But, I mean, we were still being drunk assholes in Japan, too. But they were cool about it, They still talk to us. They had Jeannie on bass at that time.
I remember her. And she was cool.
Yeah. And he was Jason's... I think he's still in the band, right? Jason Costa. It was his first tour.
About the drinking, my first year of touring, my drinking kind of got crazy too. It never became a habit, but during the tour time, the amount that I got comfortable drinking is unbelievable. I can't fathom drinking like that anymore. It was ridiculous. And I remember at one point when we were on a Jaeger tour and consuming at least a bottle of Jaeger a day plus whatever else other people would give us, at one point being like, I gotta slow down. Today I'll only drink a bottle of wine.
Wow, that's a lot of control.
Yeah. But I was sharing a bus with somebody who said they didn't drink anymore but drank a case of wine a day.
Is that someone that we both know?
Probably.
Oh, no. Is that one guy that we both know? The one that starts with R and finishes with Alf?
Oh, no. It starts with a D.
Oh, no, because he does that. I don't drink anymore, but he's putting down a case.
Our mutual friend, I was at the studio at the same time that he was at the studio back in his drinking heyday. And
DSI?
What's that?
Was he doing DSI?
Yeah, and oh my God, dude, like, I was never that bad, not even close. Like, that's a whole other level that I never even... My definition of drinking a lot doesn't even touch the level of drunk that he got to, and it's kind of horrifying.
And I know you're listening to this, so we are talking about you because you're an asshole, and we don't want you to do that.
No, but I mean, does he still do that?
Oh, yeah.
Holy shit, dude.
He says he doesn't.
Dude, you gotta stop. That was, I love you.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, we're talking like almost 10 years ago that I experienced this. I was like, holy it actually inspired me to drink less.
Yeah, good, man, because that's how it gets. That's how it can get, And, brother, with me, drinking was like, it literally, all that I've accomplished, because it's easy to pat myself in the back and say, I came from Brazil and I did all this in America, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but dude, all that I've accomplished was destroyed also by drinking.
How so?
On tour. Dude, I mean, first of all, I started getting so big, physically big, and again, I'm not talking shit about fat people. I'm saying that I was so out of shape and unhealthy that I couldn't really be a good guitar player or be hired by anyone. There was no reason for anyone to give me a job when I looked and played the way I did, even though I still had that huge ego that I told you about. I thought I was the best guitar player in the world. So it's funny that you mentioned Gus and Malone, because the tour that made me stop, it was with them, with both of. Well, Malone was not on the tour, but with Ours Is without him. The one time he didn't do it.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was Threats of Fury, and I did that tour. I did Night Rage, which is Gus's other band, And so they were first, and I was playing on that tour too. And within like 3 days, everyone hated me. Everyone thought I was an asshole within like 3 days. Gus came up to me. He's like, dude, you gotta stop, man. Like, you're fucking it up. Because I was just being a complete disaster. And I had gotten the gig because the guitarist that was in Night Rage, who's now in Amaranth, he couldn't do it for whatever reason. And he called me about it, and it was a good opportunity because it was also Gus's spot before. You know what I mean? So it's basically like playing for Gus G's other band for an upcoming guitarist. It was a good opportunity, but I blew it. I played like shit. I acted like an asshole every day, and then the last show was on a Thursday in LA, where I lived at the time, and I started drinking after the show. And I woke up the Wednesday after. So I had a 6-day drinking binge at home by myself after a tour.
So you lived in LA at the time?
Yeah, I did. Most of my US time was spent in LA. I lived there between 2008 and last year.
So, all right. I want to ask you some details about this. When you say you were being an asshole, What do you mean? If you can remember.
I mean, you mean shit that I did?
Yeah. I just want to get
Okay.
get some perspective on what level of disaster we're talking.
Okay, Peabody's in Cleveland or wherever that venue is. I got so drunk. Some chick pissed me off. I wonder why. I ripped out the gumball machine out of the floor and was trying to take it into the bus.
Holy shit.
The bus that was Firewind and Night Rage together, so the headliner and the opening band together, because, and I was trying to bring the fucking thing there. Kept getting into shit with the tour manager, just being a general dick to people. There's a lot of things that people tell me that I don't remember, like falling in front of a venue and then people clapping because it was funny as shit. Rolling down some. Oh no, that was a different tour. Was it Firewind? Yeah, there's a story of some venue in Canada that's upstairs that I rolled down the stairs up to like the front door where all these fans are coming in. This is even before the show. So dude,
pretty high disaster level.
Yeah, pretty high disaster level.
Over
man.
what span of time?
Well, the first tour was 2006, and I got Ridiculous the next year, 2007. The All That Remains thing I told you is barely 6 months after I'm living in the country.
Okay, and at what point did you quit drinking?
That was after this Firewind tour I just told you, with the 6-day drinking binge. I woke up the week after, and I was like, wait, did I just drink for a week at home? During that time, I figured out that I got kicked out of the Rainbow, which, with Scotty, dude, which is Lemmy's best friend. We both got so drunk, we told some people to fuck off that were spending money. We got kicked out. I don't even remember going there, let alone getting kicked out, And I just figured out everything I did. My wife had to go rescue me from my hotel because she didn't want me home because I was too drunk. So she sent me with the band to the hotel because the band was from Sweden, so they had a hotel. I had to stay with the band, but then apparently I punched a mirror in and the hotel kicked me out. So I'm out in the street having, my wife have come pick me up out in Hollywood at like 3 a.m.
So you're on tour with a band, you come home, and your wife doesn't want you home
because of being drunk.
Because you're such a disaster. That right there, that's crazy.
She's like, just come home tomorrow because you're too fucked up, because normally
when you get to see your significant other on tour, it's like, what's the soonest I can see you? Like we need to spend every moment together because we haven't seen each other in a month or something. And she's like, dude, fucking don't even come home. Yeah,
my wife, she confided to me a few times that like back when I drank, when I was coming home from touring, like she was always like, well, yeah, cool, it's cool that he's coming home, but like now hell's gonna start again, That's, like, I remember like sometimes, hey, it's 2 days till I get home. Oh, cool. Now it's not like that, but like she says that like it's a lot of things that she didn't tell me when I was an alcoholic, and she only told me later. I was like, well, maybe if you told me all this shit before, I would have stopped, but probably wouldn't.
Probably not.
Shit happens when it has to happen. So, and during this tour, there's another catalyst, man, and this is a very important one that I will tell for the rest of my life. During this tour, I got an audition. Okay. Now you are too close to this audition, so I'm not going to disclose any names on your show. But I got an audition during this Firewind tour, and I had to basically fly back. I don't remember what it was, but like it was a show in Atlanta, then flew back to LA for the audition, and then fly back and catch the show in New York the next day. Somehow I made it all work, and I think I killed the audition, and the kid that came in after me did not and got the job, and And I was like, really? Did I really fly cross country for this fucking thing? And I didn't get. Yeah, it was in LA, and I lived in LA at the time.
I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about.
But I was on a tour. I flew back from Atlanta. Oddly enough, from Atlanta.
Yeah.
Were you at that show, The Masquerade?
No, maybe. What? I'm not sure.
2011.
I don't know. No, I must have been in Florida. But I'm pretty sure I know what you were auditioning for.
And I can tell you later. But at the end of the day, it was a really good thing I didn't get it because it didn't do anything. But I got pissed off. And I was like, why the fuck did I not get it? And then I looked, dude, I remember I went like in the bathroom in the plane. I look myself in the mirror. I'm like, of course. Why would they pick me? Look at me. It's like I'm 50 pounds overweight. The other guy was in shape, looked good. Even if I played better than the other guy, it's like it's what they need. You know what I mean? This is not what anybody needs. Like I was like, think about it as a company. You what product am I selling here? If this is what I'm selling, well, I wouldn't give myself a job either. So that tour and that particular audition thing, I was like, okay, fuck this. I'm stopping because I need to get in shape. I can be the best guitar player in the world, but if I look like this, nobody's gonna give me the job or treat me, the way that I think that they should. So I stopped drinking on January 1st, 2012, but with that in mind. Okay,
so that's from 2006 to 2012. That is a long stretch. Yeah. I'm amazed that you're still in the industry.
Well, that's the thing. There's a lot of I don't think I was really in the industry up to 2012. I knew some people, but nobody really took me seriously.
Fair enough.
We know people in common that know who I am, but don't really take me seriously because they remember me from back then, and that's okay. I don't hold it against them. But the thing is, it's crazy, man. Like when I stopped, I was like, okay, I'm gonna work. This is what got me thinking about law of attraction and shit like that. Quite honestly, because I didn't really believe it until I was like, okay, I'm stopping drinking on January 1st, 2012, strictly so I can get in shape and get hired to be in bands. Okay, there was no other reason, no other motivation. I did not give a fuck about my health. I wasn't trying to get healthy. Like, those people, oh man, I was gonna kill myself and all that. I did not give a fuck about any of that. I didn't think it was that bad. I did not think I was an alcoholic until after I stopped. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop drinking because I'm not an alcoholic, so I can stop. And at the time I was in Brazil, and I'm like, I'm gonna lose 10 pounds. Let's see if I can lose 10 pounds, because drinking, there's no way I'm gonna go to the gym. And I eat. I'm a fat eater anyway. I like Taco Bell. I like eating crap. So I'm like, the way I eat, if I drink and don't work out, well, there's no way that's never gonna work. So I'm gonna stop drinking, see what happens. The first day, dude, I was so nauseated, but I still went down to my parents' building.
Well, were you hungover? Because you said so. January 1st. So I'm assuming that New Year's Eve was...
Oh, yeah, because it was in Brazil at my parents' house. And I got so drunk that, I was trying to kick some of my parents' guests out for whatever reason, I mean, people of my parents' age, too, be like, you guys get the fuck out of my house. I don't know why. I still don't know what happened. My parents don't really know either. But, I got that drunk. And I woke up the next day. Oh yeah, and I was a morning drinker too. I like to leave the bottle so I could grab it the next day if I remember. So I woke up and the bottle was there, and I grabbed it. I'm like, man, am I really gonna fuck that up? And then I'm like, okay, one day I won't do it. And I went straight downstairs to where they had some gym equipment. They had a treadmill, and I went on the treadmill. I was like, well, that's the only thing I really know how to do. So I did 30 minutes of treadmill, and I felt amazing after. I'm like, wow, holy fuck, I should be doing this all the time. because I hate the treadmill. But at the end of it, I felt like a sense of accomplishment that I hadn't felt in a while. It's like, wow, I actually did this. It's like, well, it's like when you as a producer, you finish your song. It's like, that feeling, I made this shit.
Yeah.
That was that feeling for the first time in a long time for me. And I'm like, well, I mean, let me keep trying to go. And I brought up the law of attraction shit because I was trying to work on my look. And my look only, okay? I wasn't too concerned about my guitar playing. My guitar playing was fine. I was concerned about looking good. And exactly 1 year after, on January 2013, ESP came out with a catalog with me on the cover without having me play a note. Like, it was my look alone that got that. It wasn't the playing.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I was like invited to, they offered me an endorsement after seeing me at the Rainbow. The person at the time was like, just basically on the way I looked, based on the way I looked. I had just come out of another endorsement deal, but I tried to get back with, and I had an upcoming tour, there's that too. I was leaving for my first tour since the Firewind tour. I was leaving for my first summer tour, and I went to the Rainbow basically for a going away party, and there ESP offered me. And I was like, well, you know what, man? I just tried to get some guitars from this company I used to work with, and they're not willing to help me out. If you guys are, I would love to listen. And I came to the office the next day before flying out. And there we got the deal, and me and the president the vice president, Jeff Moore, became really good friends. So when I came back from the tour, we had dinner. And he said right there, if you play half as good as you look, you're going to be a star. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck, That's exactly what I was trying to do. And I mean, just because I put all that energy from quitting drinking to start working out to eating right and all that, that's exactly what I got.
So how hard was it to...
It wasn't hard, dude. It wasn't, like I say to this day, I tried to stop drinking many times. In fact, it was a joke. Oh, yeah, Bill's going to stop drinking. Okay. You can ask any of my friends, I tried, but I would always go back to. And then I would be, oh, maybe I'll just drink, because I hated beer, But I was like, maybe I'll just drink beer and a shot. Yeah, but I hated beer and I loved the shot. So I would do one beer, a shot, and I'm like, maybe I need another shot, and then there it goes, So it never worked. It never worked to slow down, never worked to stop. When I finally got pissed off about that audition, and then the drinking binge a week after, I was like, it was something I could grab onto. I'm like, okay, either I'm gonna get in shape, or this is gonna keep happening. So from that point on, it was extremely easy, man. I can't even explain how easy it was. Some of my drinking friends, because I still have the same friends. I still have the same circle of friends. And some of the drinking friends are always like...
They probably like you a lot better now.
No, everybody does. There's people that did not like me before and like me now a lot. Like, it's impressive enough that I look at it and I'm like, is that really me? Like, was it really me back then? It was weird, man. It was weird. The second I got pissed off enough, it just happened like that. And then things started, and it happened exactly as I thought it would, I'm like, okay, the second I look good, I'll start getting calls. I don't know how it's going to be, but I will. And I did. And I'm like, right now I'm turning down jobs left and right. It's like for a guy that couldn't even get one job in 2011.
So by 2013, you're on the cover of the ESP catalog, and you've quit drinking, you've lost the weight, you've been hitting the gym, you're looking good. What happens next? Well,
in 2012, in the summer of 2012, I did the first tour with Circle to Circle. Now, I'm pretty sure that your listeners won't be too familiar with that band, but what it is the singer for Sabotage and also the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And it's basically like his band. When Sabotage stopped, that guy started playing. Again, they were one of my favorite bands. Oh, and also one of my goals in America was like to get involved with that music. Trans-Siberian Orchestra is what they are. But I started playing with this singer, and he had a European tour in 2012 in the summer. So that was basically my comeback to the industry, but sober. And it's funny because one of the things I used to say was that I wanted to play Wacken before I turned 30. And I was 29 that year when I played Wacken with them. That was the first show of the tour. And also my first show sober, you know. And from then on, I started running into people I met before on tour and running into and just making new contacts. From then on, it was really networking, because the next thing to happen after that, the A&R for ESP at the time had a band of his own, and he went out to Europe and took me to play for him. So I made some more contacts then. And I just started doing the sideman thing. People started calling me, you know. And then I spent a period in LA. I think this was the end of 2013, I believe, the beginning of 2014, where I didn't have any gigs. And then that's when I got hooked up with Tommy Vaxxed to do the Westfield Massacre thing. You know, and around that time I wasn't really touring, and it was my new attempt at doing a band. You know, It was me, him, and Tim Young, and we had another guitarist, really good guitarist, Rick DeMarco, and basically it was just me and Tommy, the music. You know, me and Tommy wrote the music. I think it was 6 or 7 songs, maybe it's 8, I don't know. And then we started rehearsing with the band, but again, you know, I started getting calls to do other stuff with the Sabotage people. The Trans-Siberian Orchestra came around the same time. I started talking to them, and I just didn't have time to do that anymore, you know. I also played, during this time too, I started playing with John Oliva, who's the main guy in Sabotage and the guy that writes all the music for the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Not Paul Laniu, the guy who just died, not him. John Oliva was like his partner in the music. He's the guy that writes most of the music. And he has a band of his own that's called John Oliva's Pain. He doesn't really play a lot, but he does festivals sometimes.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, he does like big festivals. He doesn't like touring, you know, for whatever reason. But I did one important festival with that band, and I think that's really what cemented TSO and, you know, talking to me and considering me and all that.
So let's talk about TSO a little bit. And just to recap for people, you did a lot of proving yourself in the side projects. I guess you'd call them the TSO side projects.
Yeah, I've been with everyone.
Yeah, yeah. So you put years and lots of different sessions and of being around those people before you got offered the TSO gig, right?
Correct.
It didn't just come out of nowhere.
No.
And because I'm just saying that because generally none of these great opportunities ever really come out of nowhere. They're usually, at least in my experience, they're usually a result of a couple years or more of knowing people and working with them on smaller things and developing a relationship until eventually the bigger thing happens. So you said that tour cemented it, and what, did they offer you an audition?
Well, it was a few different things happening at the same time. First of all, to get a little bit into the history of this, John Oliva, the guy I just mentioned that I played for, the main guy in Trans-Siberian Orchestra, his brother, Chris Oliva, died in 1993. And he was one of my favorite guitarists. Of course, I started playing it in 1993, so he wasn't when he died. But he, you know, over the years, I became a really big fan of that guy. And I had a very similar style of playing as he did. So for this show, this festival that we did, that I did with John, Prague Power in Atlanta, actually. Mm-hmm. We were headliners in 2014. We were playing one of the most famous Sabotage albums called Streets. And I've known that album so well my whole life. I knew how to play note by note, like the solos, everything that everyone that played with John before had gotten close, but not really, quite getting it. And he said on an interview to some magazine that I was the closest he had ever heard from his brother, that to play like his brother, And I mean, that thing got a lot of attention in the camps, if that makes sense. In the people within the people relate, well, who the fuck is this guy? Because he just came out of nowhere, which is not really true, because I had played already with Zach in Circle to Circle, who's also the other singer for Sabotage. You know, so I was already, you know, going up the steps, so to speak. When he said that, it got a lot of attention, got a lot of their fans pissed off too. and especially, yeah, because they're an older band, you know. They're a band for Sabotage is from like, their best album, you know, is from 91. So their stuff is from 86, 87, you know, like I'm 34 years old. Their fans, you know, it's like, but I caught some flack from that. But John told me that, you know, the Trans-Siberian Orchestra was this thing, and they had other musicians like on the backup band and people working around them. You know, there were other ways to work with them, but you kind of had to get in. But he's a really important part of it, you know. So I figure if there ever will be an opportunity, it will come through him. You know, now when I started rehearsing with him, and he got, you know, he said the thing about me playing his brother's solos and all that. At that same time, Joe Hoekstra got the job at Whitesnake, who's the guitarist for the East Band. It happened at the same time. Like, I was in the studio with John as this hit the press. You know, and I just looked at, I remember just looking at him and showing him, I'm like, okay, so something should happen now, right? Still didn't hear from them, nothing, you know, but I kept working with John. John just said, you know, dude, trust me, you know. I kept working with him, kind of, yeah. And then I started hearing from other people in the organization. Okay, then I started, Al Pitrelli started talking to me. Al Pitrelli was also one of my favorite guitar players growing up. For those who don't know, he played with Alice Cooper. He was in Megadeth for a minute.
Oh yeah, he's great.
He's the main guitarist in TSO, and I started hearing from him, and he started talking about me in the interviews. I'm like, okay, something is gonna happen, but because still nobody was calling me, you know. Then one of my best friends, who unfortunately passed away last year, was one of the techs in TSO, Kyle Sable. And then Kyle started saying that he started hearing my name from higher people. And I'm like, okay, well, when are they going to call me? Then eventually I got a call one day. And they didn't really tell me why, but they said, you know, we're going to fly you out to Florida and gonna play for us. They never called you an audition. There was never a point where I was challenged to play this or that, you know what I mean? I just kind of played with them and hung out with them. It was never like, okay, let me see you play that, you know. There was never that.
So you just went and hung out, and you guys played some, and
yeah, I mean, I knew a lot of the music.
Yeah.
So I just sat and jammed with him, you know. But they never. I was never under the microscope or anything.
Well, I guess you had already passed a bunch of tests.
That's kind of what I see. But then I still didn't know what was happening until because they also had the Trans-Siberian Orchestra and Sabotage, which is something that didn't hit the American press. It's so weird to me. The Trans-Siberian Orchestra and Sabotage in 2015 were the headliners of Wacken. And when I say the headliners, is we played both stages at the same time. Both of them. We're playing the same song in both stages. There's like 20 musicians, 40 singers.
Wait, at the same...
The biggest production at the same time.
Synced?
Yeah, synced. 90,000 people saw that. It was the biggest production of all the history of Wacken Open Air, and it was nowhere to be seen in the American press.
I never even heard of that.
Yeah, look it up. I'll send you some videos. It was ridiculous, man. It was 6 weeks of rehearsal every day.
Yeah, we'll put the videos. Hey, we're going to put these videos for you listeners in the show notes if you want to see what he's talking about.
Then when I saw that announcement, I knew that they were going to need all 4 guitar players, you know, because they were going to do the show at the same time. And then I started seeing the Whitesnake tour dates, and then I saw that he was playing that day. I'm like, oh, they're going to call me for that show. They're going to call, and they did. You know, that was my first show with them, really. And more nuts than that is that I played on the Sabotage stage. So Sabotage stopped playing in 2002 and did this one special show in 2015, and I was the guitarist for that. And then on the other stage was the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and we're playing the same song. And that, for what I understand, was kind of like, you know, my audition-ish. It's like, okay, well, we've seen him on stage, we can take him on tour now.
Quite the audition.
Yeah, dude, that was pretty insane. Yeah, but it was amazing, dude. And you guys as producer, you would love the way we did it. I mean, I don't know all the technical aspects, but the way do you know Morris sound here in Tampa?
Yeah, for sure.
So we rehearsed the Morris sound, one band in each recording room, and then the engineer in the middle mixing it. We all play to clicks, and you're not really seeing everyone that you're playing with during rehearsal. It's quite a trip.
That
man.
must have sounded crazy.
It sounded just like the album. There's 4 guitars, there's 2 drums, 2 basses, there's like 4 keyboard players, 20 singers. And these 20 singers is Russell Allen from Symphony X, Jeff Scott Soto, from Yngwie Malmsteen, Zach Stevens, of course, from Sabotage, Nathan James from Inglorious. So it's all like, pretty heavy hitters. And again, nowhere in the press in the U.S.
Wow, what a crazy production.
Yeah, it was pretty nuts.
So after that, you're in the band?
Yeah, well, I mean, I am in the organization, but for example, I didn't do it last year. Joe was back last year. So last year, I was basically helping with the backup band, which is guys that literally sit at home waiting for someone to break a leg, So I did rehearsals with them.
So how many bands are there in this organization?
There's two at the same time touring. There's an East and a West. They're mirror images of each other, even look-wise, kind of. And they play the same notes, the same parts, the same music, everything. And then there's a third band that's backup, and some of the drum tech. Actually, both drum techs are also in the backup band, and then there's these guys. There's a bass player. There's a couple keyboard players, and they rehearse with the real band. Just in case. So everyone needs to be ready. Every guitar player has to know both parts, because you never know who's going to go down. Keyboard player, same thing, have to know both parts. There's a backup. I don't think there's a backup violinist, or at least I haven't met one. But there's, violinists in both bands.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's depressing to come out of that tour after the last tour day when you're flying home and you have to do all your shit. That's
and
depressing.
You have to go back to real life. You know what blows my mind about TSO?
What?
How is that style of music so big in the U.S.?
It's crazy, and it's not really as big in Europe either.
Yeah, but it's like power metal, like 80s stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's huge.
I mean, dude, some of the songs that we play, they're Sabotage songs. They're songs that I was rocking out as a kid, So it's...
How? I don't understand. How is it so big?
I don't understand either. And the fan base is amazing, man. It's like they're fans year round. They're not people that just come to the show and that's it. Because that's what I used to think. Because I've seen TSO quite a few times as a fan, and I used to think that most of the people in the crowd kind of were clueless to, like they didn't really know what metal was and all that. But I mean, they are fans year long. They write about it. They post videos. They're quite incredible, and they do end up in the heavier music because of that. I'll give you a great example. I know a fan. She's, I don't know her age, but she's in like her 60s. She's older, and she sent a picture from the Slayer show, and because she went there to see Skolnick with Testament. Because Skolnick had my position before, my position, not anymore, I guess, but Skolnick had the same position for 13 years. He is the East guitar player, really, as far as the fans are concerned. And so because she's a fan of Skolnick, she went to see Testament and ended up at the Slayer show, and now she likes Slayer.
Amazing.
So yeah, there's a lot of that, and there's families, but there's a lot of musicians too. I noticed that a lot of the people that come, they know exactly what was going on in the show, what part, It's quite incredible, but I think I think that this may even sound like poetic a little bit, but I think TSO is bigger than the music, is bigger than definitely bigger than the people in it. You know, it's like the Nutcracker. You know, it's a Christmas tradition. It's not going anywhere after Paul's death. You know, like it's because the people come, they bring their families, they know the show, they look forward to it. Dude, we played Erie, Pennsylvania. That was the first show, and my mom flew in from Brazil to see me. We're at this restaurant, and the person's like, "So, you know, are you going to see TSO tonight?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm actually playing with TSO. It's my first show tonight." She's like, "Wow, you know, that's cool. But did you know that the city that we basically stop and wait for the TSO show all year? Like, it's crazy like that. Like the city, like." All these people, they're a big community too.
So here's, I think this is funny, that so when you were in a tiny band, you were a big egomaniacal asshole, and then you get into...
Thank you, because that's exactly what I was.
Yeah, but then you get into this huge band, and like you're humble about it.
Well, I think that everything happens for a reason and the way it has to happen. I was not ready to be in a band like that when I drank. Absolutely not. If there's a big song and I'm not doing the solo and I'm 25 years old and drunk, I just, fuck you. You don't respect my playing. So, you know, that's the kind of guy I was. But I don't know. It's like... But the most humbling thing about it, man, it's to me about TSO and why I will never like take it for granted or think anything like that is because I got some of my favorite musicians in the same band, guys that I like from different projects as a kid. And you gotta understand, man, I grew up in Brazil, so I mean these people are like Arnold Schwarzenegger to me. it's like they're more important, you know. It's like TSO has Russell Allen to me is the best singer like since Dio, you know, since Dickinson. Like he's the best singer in metal in a long time. And he's one of the TSO singers. But as a kid, I also had an Yngwie tribute band where I played As Above, So Below, and I Am a Viking, and now I'm playing with the original singer in the same band, you know? And then keyboard players, there was only one keyboard player that I was into as a kid. It's this guy called Vitaly Kupri. He's Ukrainian, not very popular, but the best at like shred keyboard player style. He's also in TSO. It's like... all of a sudden I'm in this big band, but all of these different idols are also in the band. How the fuck do I ever feel like I'm, you know, like that? I'm not. The co-guitarist in the band is someone I literally bought a guitarist because he was playing that on stage and I saw it as a kid. How do you ever feel bigger than that?
That's incredible. So you're in a situation where every time you go play with these people, it's like, fuck yeah, I get to play with my heroes.
Yeah. Yeah, I have Chris Caffrey was a very important influence for me as a kid. Here in my wardrobe, I have a guitar, a Jackson Randy Rhodes that I bought because I saw Sabotage in Brazil at a stadium as a kid. It is 1998. And he was playing a Randy Rhodes. I'm like, wow, I want a guitar like that. So that birthday, I asked my parents for that guitar. I still have it. I still play, and now I play in a band with the guy. You know, so there's no way to ever feel bigger than that. You know, there's no way to ever not be humble about that.
And as a result, also, like, I know you just bought a house. What was that? Maybe like a year ago or something?
Yeah, I moved in November. Not even a year ago.
But and you have like a nice house, nice car, like good life. You did it. Yeah,
that's how I see it. That's how I view it, man. There are things in my career that I miss that I'm like okay, I wish this happened. Like for example, my name and my face are better known than my guitar playing. You know, like I'm known as the guy that plays in the bands and does whatever. But that was the goal for a while. You know, because my dad was always really, really, really. He was like, well, you want to be a musician? That's cool, man. But like, you gotta make a living doing it. You can't be like these guys. And, you know, I mean, no disrespect, but I have, you know, like my dad's seen my friends in Brazil, basically become bums because they didn't make any music, So the whole to make it thing, it is abstract. But to me, for a while, it meant that I'm able to buy a house, that I'm able to live off of music, however it is, because I'm not really... I have an egotistical relationship with music in a way. I want to perform. And you said something, man. You said something a long time ago. I don't remember where it was. Either it was a long time. It was before we met. It was before we talked. But I've seen you say something like about how if musicians are chasing success, they will never get it. But if they're just doing it because they can't help but perform, then they will be okay.
What I meant by it was that in order to have the drive to get great enough to where you're going to even have a chance in this world, and to be able to stick out all the shitty parts of the industry, especially when you're first getting going, you have to really want to do it. Like you won't survive otherwise.
But I think there's another aspect that I don't hear a lot of people touch on. That's how I read your message anyway, or your thing anyway, was that a lot of people are very artistic about their music, okay? And meaning they have something to put out. I'll give you an example of the most artistic guy I know in metal right now. That's Devin Townsend.
Oh, yeah.
He needs to put that shit out.
Oh, yeah.
That shit, he hears that shit in his head. It's driving him fucking crazy. He has to put that out. It doesn't matter if someone will buy it or not. My relationship is a little different. I like performing. And when I say performing, I don't just mean like stage presence wise. I mean performing, playing guitar. I like playing guitar, but I also like playing things that I know how they're supposed to sound, and I have fun making them sound really good. So like I have this one part of the solo. I will sit 3 hours and make that sound right. And which is with the I Am Morbid, with the Morbid Angel songs, that's coming in very handy, because a lot of the riffs are like, yeah, you're playing the note, but you're not making it sound right. So I have I don't really have a lot of art to put out there. I don't have a lot of I don't have a message. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes I think that it doesn't just show up in one form. I think that Devin Townsend is one type of artist, but I'm sure that he will readily admit that there are guitar players that are way more accomplished than he is.
Like I would love to be in his band playing the parts that he's telling me to play, probably more than having to come up with the parts myself. If that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I mean, look at classical musicians who don't really compose their own parts. People going to say that they're not artists?
I see myself more like that.
Yeah. I mean, are you going to say that someone who can play a Beethoven concerto isn't an artist just because they didn't write it? Of course not. It's called performance art.
And dude, even it's funny too, because I'll use Westfield Massacre as an example. Tommy came up to me. Actually, we were introduced by a manager that thought we would be a good match, and we were. I thought the album was awesome, but I didn't really care too much for the music that he wanted to do. It's not my style, but I listened to the album, to Divine Heresy, and I listened to stuff that he did, and then I listened to some Fear Factory, and I came up with the album. But those were like set rules, okay, this song has to sound kind of like this song has to sound kind of like this song has to sound kind of like this. Oh, I like this part. Like I heard some other band that more modern metal band or whatever. I was like, oh, that's a cool part. So I kind of ripped off that one part. I'm like, oh, Tommy singing over this would work great. It was labor, if that makes, so to speak. It was labor. It was putting parts together that finally sounded good, but based on who I'm writing for. It's not really, oh, this is what I love, this is what's inside of me, sort of thing.
It sounds like what you love is the physical act of fucking being awesome at guitar.
Yeah, so it just performing and sounding good, that's what something wrote. Here's how your music will sound the best. That's kind of what I figured out about myself, because whenever I tried to do things and start bands and stuff. It never worked,
dude,
man.
You know what? I think it's really important and mature to figure that out. Like, there are a lot of guys, like, I'm not going to name someone, but I know someone who I think is, like, one of the best guitar players alive. And I think that he should have the gigs. Like, he's good looking and he's fucking incredible. He's always been incredible. All the guitar players look up to him. But he's not a good writer. He never has been. But he's always been a phenomenal sideman, just like incredible. Like, he can play your stuff, you know, not you, but like he can play other people's music so great, and he brings so much to it, but he doesn't want to be that. He wants to be known as a writer too, and that has, in my opinion, fucked up his career, because he's never been comfortable as just being a sideman, where I feel like if he embraced it and like loved it and admitted that that's what he was great at, he'd be like playing for Celine Dion or some shit. Like, you know, he'd be in like the top bands at this point.
It's really funny you say that, because that's, if I had to point out one thing that I think is missing in my career, is that the writing aspect of it. Because, for example, like, how do I put this without sounding like a total asshole? I see a lot of people freaking out about guitar players that I listen and I'm like, okay, I could do that, but I don't want to do that. It's really, I'm not being mean, but it's just guys that, like, people think I see achieving a lot with solo music especially, that I'm like, I don't, like, I want that, I would like to have that sort of recognition as opposed to being the sideman, but it's like, it's so much work, and if it's to just do music like that, I really don't want to do it. You know, so I'm constantly in this existential crisis of like, yeah, man, you know what? I'm touring the world, I'm doing all this, but you know, I'm not. Revolver's not talking about me. You know what I mean? That's why I use the TSO sabotage thing as an example. That was a huge fucking deal in Europe. We did a press conference for 300 people.
Holy shit!
But the fact that the U.S. press didn't give a shit really did bother me. You know, so I'm like, okay, I think about this sometimes. I'm like, should I be trying to write some modern music and be in a band like that? Yeah, but then I'm gonna end up on this festival and doing this, and fuck that, it's too much work. Let me go play and get paid. Shut up. That's kind of what happens in my head every single day. You know what I mean? This is why, like, right now, right as we speak, I have a singer in Europe recording 2 songs for me that I'm gonna try to release as a solo artist. But they're still vocal songs. They still very much sounds like band. It's power metal, and it sounds like it should be a band. But I'm gonna try to release it just under, you know, just as a solo artist and see what happens. Luckily for me, we are in the internet age where I don't need to do a whole album to try to do that.
But also, you're gonna try to do that and see what happens. But you're not going to ruin a work opportunity just because there's no writing involved. So this other guy I'm talking about ruined opportunities with bigger bands because they didn't offer him a writing position.
Oh man, I don't think that's very smart.
No, and especially because he's not a very good writer. So but he's an incredible guitar player. So he should have taken those gigs and just accepted it. Because what he can do on guitar, very few people can do. So he should have just accepted it, you know?
It's funny you brought this up, because with the first band I mentioned the whole time, the Metal Blade band, Celador, that was kind of the mindset I had back then. It pissed me off that the one guy was writing all the music. But it never occurred to me that every single opportunity that came to that band, from the record deal to the trips to Japan to all the stupid, metalcore tours we did, all that came out of his writing. So if his writing was working, why was I feeling offended that he wouldn't let me write? Like, how much better can you get than where it is right now? If it's working, just let the guy do his job. play guitar. That's not how I thought at the time, and that's why I had really big problems with the guitar players. And like, I love the guy now. We're better friends now, and I always tell him, like, I kind of wish back then that I let you lead the band, because it's your band. It is your band that got signed. It is your band that got the opportunities. Why the hell did I think that I could do better than you? That's stupid.
Well, that's maturity talking.
Yeah, but that's like, I'm saying that 10 years later.
Yeah.
Because that was literally 10 years ago.
Well, it's interesting what a little perspective can do, but that perspective, I feel, has allowed you to now be at a point where you are living the dream. So it's important to know yourself.
Yeah. And I don't like saying living the dream yet, man. I don't feel comfortable yet. You know what I mean?
Well, you won't ever feel comfortable, hopefully, because
I've had 3 years of like good income, which was what I had in my head, like enough to get a house or whatever. But I'm like, okay, but if I have a good schedule until like mid 2018, but I'm like, what if I don't get anything after? That's always buzzing in my head, man.
Well, yeah. That's the eternal struggle.
Yeah. Well, I just thought that, man, when I buy a house, things are going to change. No, now I freak out. Now it's like, oh, fuck, I don't have to pay rent. Now I got to pay for a house. Fuck.
Yeah, it definitely changes things.
It's funny how obvious that is, but it didn't really hit you until it happens,
Well, I mean, dude, I just had Blasco on here, and even though he is actually living the dream, he still doesn't feel like any of it's set in stone, and he still feels like it could fall apart at any moment, and still keeps that hustle alive.
I always wonder if we ever reach a point where that doesn't happen, because if someone like Blasco feels like that, and I know that Gus does too, and he was in the same band until recently, It's like when is it good? When do you feel safe? In music, it probably never happens.
Probably never.
And yeah, man, I'm sorry to hear that that your friend doesn't recognize, like, unfortunately, not everyone can be a songwriter. Not everyone can be Steve Harris. There's 6 people we made, and there's only one Steve Harris. I always say that.
Dude, but also not everyone can be like the guitar player that gets hired. Like,
exactly.
There's only 1 or 2 positions, right, in any band for a guitar player to come in. It's not like being an amazing guitar player is not easy. So accept it and love it. And by the way, on the topic of does it ever go away in music, of the feeling of needing the next gig, my dad is in his 60s. Symphony conductor, very successful, and he's still trying to get the next gig, always.
No shit. Who's your dad?
His name's Eyal Levi, Yoel.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I don't think it ever goes away. Like, if he's in his mid-60s, and he, by all accounts, has made it, but he's still hustling. So,
dude, that's amazing. I would like to talk about that off the air after.
Sure.
I didn't know you had a conductor dad. I went to school to be a conductor.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'll tell you all about it. But, Bill, thank you so much for coming on here and being so open. This is a great episode.
Oh, I'm glad, man. Yeah, sometimes I think I talk too much.
That's what a podcast is for.
That's awesome, man. And yeah, I appreciate... Oh, you know how I said at the beginning that being in your podcast was actually something that I considered an accomplishment, specifically because of the audience that you reach. Okay, so I mentioned how I'm doing all these things, but Revolver isn't talking about me. Now, your audience is exactly the audience that I don't reach. I know for a fact that most of the people listening to this have never heard of me before. And now there's enough of like, wait, what the fuck? How come? That they'll go and check it out. Everything I do, even the gigs this summer, I'm doing I Am Morbid, which is a death metal audience.
Yep.
It's Morbid Angel fans. And I'm doing Udo Dirk Schneider from Accept, who's also a power metal. For US standards, he's also power metal. I do not reach the younger kids. I do not reach the super producer kids. So I thank you very much for having me here, because this is important for my company, for me.
It's a pleasure.
This is really good. Thank you very much, man.
Yeah, and all of you guys listening who haven't heard of Bill, now you have, and go check him out.
That's right.
Telling me sexy.
Yep, I try.
The Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast is brought to you by Two Notes Audio Engineering. Two Notes is a leader in the market for load box, cabinet, and mic simulators. Gone are the days of having ISO rooms or having to record an amp at ear-bleeding volumes to capture that magic tone. The Torpedo Live, Reload, and Studio allow you to crank your amp up as loud as you want, but record silently. Check out www.2-notes.com for more info. To ask us questions, make suggestions, and interact, visit nailthemix.com. 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 Nailthemix.